is yours.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mika Puza again. Hello. Hello. Thank you. I'm going to involve you like Teacher Greta did, and I need you to, I'm going to throw 2 words at you, and you are going to throw back 2 at me. I need you to do it in style. Okay? During the story, I'm going to pause now and then, and I'm going to tell you, sour, sour, sweet. And you are going to tell me, sour, 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 in your own style, okay? The title of this story is The Jollification, and it's based on real life events on when I was growing up. And this story was written in 2001. Day 1. The month of February was here again, and it was time to harvest the arrowroot. This week, it was Miss Christine's turn. All the younger heads in the village called her Tan Tan. She had started preparing from the night before, making sure that everything she needed was in place. She had gone to draw water from the well, armed with a bucket, a cutter, and some corralito whisks. She had made several trips to and fro to fill 2 half-tanks with water for soaking the roots. She pulled 2 pigs from under the house, just in case any of the men who came to came without. So soft, sweet. Out in the kitchen, coals were already in the coal pot, and 3 fire rocks in the fireplace next to the kitchen were all set to go. There was a huge pile of firewood under the house. She had already parched and ground the wild coffee beans from the trees over by the coal pit some days ago. Just the day before, she had baked 3 dozen evenly browned Johnny cakes in the stone oven, along with her famous Bomber Toffee cake. Morning had broken, and she came out of the house in the cool, crisp air, lifted her eyes to give God thanks, and predicted that it was going to be a beautiful day. She heard commotion down in the arrow ground and noticed that 2 men were already clearing off. She wondered how many more would come. "Morning, my people," she greeted heartily. "Morning, Tan Tan," they replied in unison. "Light up the fireplace." She laughed and went into the kitchen to catch fire in the coal pot. Miss Lily came with 2 liters of fresh cow milk. She greeted Miss Christine with the usual kiss on each cheek, put the cow milk on the washstand just outside the kitchen, and headed for the arrow ground. In the meantime, other men had arrived, and the air was filled with the rhythmic sound of picks digging into the soil, occasionally bouncing off a rock with a spark. Miss Lily busied herself picking up the roots and throwing them in a basket. When this was full, she would carry it up to the yard, dump them in one of the half-tanks of water to soak. This made it easier to strip the root of its onion-like skin. By now, the coals in the coal pot were glowing bright orange, and Tan Tan put the 2 liters of milk to boil. Then she went out to pull some firewood from under the house to start up the fireplace. She expertly placed the wood between the 3 fire rocks and put some dried twigs in between. Then she doused the twigs with kerosene, scratched a match, and threw it on them, and headed quickly for the kitchen to check the milk before it boiled over in the fire. Song and laughter rang out from the Arab ground. One woman cackled out as a joke sweetened her. Tantan had gotten help in the kitchen, and they started preparing breakfast. The coarse coffee was stirred into the boiling milk and left to simmer on the coal pot. Pretty soon, the coffee would be served, strained and served. The pot of coffee was replaced by a saucepan to stew saltfish. The tin cups and enamel cups were already placed on a wooden tray. Nenen, Tantan's nearest neighbor, was busy cutting the Johnny cakes open and smearing them with rich, fresh butter, which Tantan's sister, Dada, had made. A huge pot of dried pigeon peas and pigtail, which had been soaking from the night before, was put on the fire rocks to start the pea soup for lunch. Sour, sweet! Sour. When the saltfish was finished, the pot of coffee was placed back on the coal pot to be heated, and breakfast was ready to be served. The men and women who were in the Arrow ground had already gone to sit in the shade of a big stringy mango tree that was in the middle of the land. They waited patiently for Tantan and Nenen to bring down the trays of aromatic, steaming cups of coffee and the slightly spalled enamel plates piled up high with tasty saltfish and belly-filling Johnny cakes. They exchanged jokes, tidbits of juicy gossip, teased each other, and laughter pealed through the air. When breakfast arrived, a volunteer said grace, and they started eating. Now and then, someone would comment on how scrumptious it was. 2 women who had finished eating breakfast were busy stripping and cleaning the arrows and throwing them in a half tank of clean water for a second washing. In the meantime, Tantan and Nenen had gone back to the kitchen. One was kneading the flour to make the cattle tongue dumpling for the pea soup, and the other was peeling and dicing pumpkin, sweet potatoes, yam, and seed, dasheen, to add to the pot. All these provisions had come from Tantan's garden, along with onion, chive, persil, and thyme, and a pigeon peas, all from her garden over by the poultry. The pigtails, just a minute, excuse me, okay, my glasses messing me up. The corn pigtails were donated by Miss Manda from a few pigs she'd butchered over the past months. The pot was boiling steadily, and every now and then, more wood was added to the fireplace. The bright morning sun had risen higher in the sky, and the warm rays were beating down on the Arab gang. Beads of sweat and perspiration formed on glistening foreheads, armpits, backs, and chests were decorated with varying sweat patterns. Whiffs of strong body odors were caught every now and then, but no one paid attention to them. The jollification was in full swing. Tantan was pleased with the turnout. 3 men and 2 ladies from the neighboring village had joined the gang. She counted 15 heads in total, excuse me, including the breeze shooters. Even more so, she was pleased with the bountiful crop the arrowroot had yielded. She raised her eyes and thanked Papa God, praying that the togetherness would continue for generations to come, and got several amens from around. Not having any children of her own, Tantan hoped that her nieces and their children would continue this tradition when she has gone to meet her maker. The pungent aroma of the pea soup, which she was diligently stirring, filled the air and jarred her wandering thoughts. Sour, sweet! The sun was now at its peak, and that meant it was lunchtime. Bring it on, Tantan, bring it on. Bring it on, Tantan, bring it on. The chant from the Ara ground reached the women in the kitchen, who had already started dishing out the thick, colorful pea soup in bowls and calabashes of various sizes and shapes. The wooden trays were hoisted on the cook's head, and they headed for the Ara ground, chanting their response to the tune of a popular hymn. Hold the fort, for we are coming with some rich pea soup. Tantan had a basket in her hand, and one could see the necks of several bottles protruding from under the flour bag cloth, which was meant to cover them. Grins grew wider as the basket was spotted, for they knew that it contained bottles of a famous guavaberry rum and lime punch. They knew that they would splurge on these to their heart's content. Everybody had converged under the stringy mango tree. One of the breeze shooters volunteered to say grace, and he thanked God for the bounty which they were about to receive and for the hands that had prepared it. Another voice added that he should also ask God to bless the mouths which were about to eat it, even the ones that did not work for it. They had dug up most of the Ara ground, and the piece that was left would only take a few hands to dig. This would be done the following day. They had already decided among themselves who would be coming to finish digging and who would start pounding. Tantan could not stop thanking them and reminded them to take home some arrow tails, which they would boil in slightly salted water to eat as a snack or enjoyed with boiled fish or stewed meat. The borrowed picks were returned once more and stored under the house. The plates, the bowls, the calabashes, cups and pots were washed and turned down on the washstand outside the kitchen. Tantan made sure that all the fires were put out, and the other women covered the half tanks of root, which were now all washed and stripped ready for pounding the following day. Some of the women and men had gone home. A few stretched out under the stringy mango tree to sleep off the effects of the guava berry rum and the lime punch. Tantan started planning and preparing for the following day. Now, day 2 is coming up. So sweet! All was in place for the events of the following day as it unfolded. The word had spread, and 3 more heads were added to the gang. The men divided themselves into 2 groups, one to dig and one to pound, and the ladies into 3 groups, one to gather, one to strip and wash, and one to sweep. The day's menu consisted of hard slit and lights, with titty bread and coffee for breakfast, rice and peas and fried fish, with fried plantain and stewed eggplants for lunch. And the much coveted bottles had been refilled. The tubs for squeezing were all dressed up and covered with white cotton straining cloths, securely held in place with a length of 2-inch rope tied with that special knot, aided by a piece of sturdy stick for tightening or slackening. The 5 mortars in the yard were filled with roots, and the pounding began. After a brief discussion about who was going to be the soloist in the chant, they set the rhythm and the group started to sing. Now, you are going to sing. You are going to sing Charlie Bembe. Okay? Just that. So here we go. Charlie Bembe, he cookie patina game none. Charlie Bembe, he went to town, he na brush it teeth. Charlie Bembe. The soloist continued, and he went on, and poor Charlie Bembe was at his mercy. All the while, the pestles were falling in perfect unison, producing that unique sound of the arrowroot season. The diggers repeated the same ritual as the day before, and after breakfast, the labor continued. The news about the latest addition to Mr. Zingi's head of cattle circulated, and the fact that his donkey had jumped the fence again was also passed on. Now and then, the cry, "Action!" rang out in the yard, meaning that the root was ready to be taken out of the mortar. One of the women would go with a bucket and remove the pulp and refill the mortar. When all the root was washed and squeezed out into balls, the men would start pounding the kwakwa, as these balls were called. Lazy Joe arrived just about lunchtime, and the men chided him about how he was coming to lend a mouth instead of coming to lend a hand. That did not bother him one bit. He sauntered around, had lunch, and disappeared. While waiting for the food to digest, one of the men started a song about Lazy Joe and his nasty habit. At least, poor Charlie Bembe was given a rest. The group had decided to push on a little longer to get all the digging and pounding over with. Only some of the women would have to come back the next day to finish washing and squeezing the last set of kwakwa. Some men sported quite a few blisters in their hands, already calloused, and they displayed them like trophies. Tan kept the liquor flowing, and later in the afternoon, they were hot baked Johnny cakes with fresh butter and cheese, which Miss Liddy had sent down. She sent her grandson with a message saying that she was not feeling well enough to come down the hill, but she knocked up a little something to help out. Dusk had started setting in when the last morsel of cocoa was taken out. Everyone looked exhausted, but they were all in high spirits, with a little help, of course, for the bottles were empty again. The gang left one by one with their portion of quackwa and fine. Some quackwa would be used as pig food or chicken feed, and the fine would be wrung in a cloth, dried in the sun, pounded and sifted. The meal would be used to make dumplings or fritters. Everything was covered up and cleaned up. A few ladies returned the following day to help finish up. Sour sweet! When all is done, the water in the tubs will be left to settle overnight. Then Tantan will cautiously dip out the water as not to stir up the starch, which would have settled at the bottom. The top of the starch will be brownish, so it will have to be washed and rinsed off until it became gleaming white. That water was used to give the pigs. The starch was taken out in chunks, placed in flour bags, and Tantan will then beat the bags with a flat stick to set the starch and for the excess water to drain out. After 2 days of draining in the bags, the starch will be opened on white cotton sheets and placed outside in the sun on galvanized zinc supported by 2 tanks to dry. Tantan will keep a close eye on the weather, hoping it doesn't rain. When the sun goes down, she will tie up the starch in the sheets and call any able-bodied young man who would happen to be passing at that time to put the bundles of starch inside for her. This was done with pleasure, for they knew that they would be getting a little treat and a chance to come back the following morning to bring the starch back out. After a week or 2 of sunning, depending on the weather, the starch will be properly dry. Tantan will take the scales and brown 1-pound bags without enough for all those who had helped to get a pound of starch. The rest will be stored in flour bags until it was time to sell that batch. That night, Tantan prayed for Papa God to bless all those who had participated in the jollification and those who were willing but unable to come. She also asked him to give her the strength to enable her to help others in return. Nenen's turn was next, and she knew that help would pour out for Nenen just as it did for her. That was a true spirit of jollification, which she hoped would live on. Sour sweet! I thank you.
Thank you, Kukuza. Up next, we have Madame Eva Osmond. Yes, good night everyone, and I am glad to be here tonight. It's a great opportunity for me, but I am sorry, I will read 2 poems in French. Le premier poème a été écrit il y a 16 ans avec 2 enfants de l'association SOS Enfants des Îles du Nord, et vous verrez que l'actualité est toujours là. Je l'ai lu parce que Colombier, c'est le noyau vert de Saint-Martin. Je suis très attachée à l'environnement, à la terre et à ceux qui la préservent, dont je suis admirative. Ce poème s'appelle « Ma planète ». Ma planète vieillit, elle fait des cheveux gris. Ma planète se meurt, elle perd toutes ses couleurs. L'Amazonie, son poumon vert, est dévoré par le billet vert. Son chapeau glacé, petit à petit, disparaît. La couche d'ozone perforée laisse le soleil nous brûler. Les animaux en danger nous supplient de les sauver. Et les enfants silencieux regardent les adultes faire ce qu'ils croient le mieux et qui ne provoque que misère. Ma planète pleure devant tant de malheurs. Mais si maintenant nous l'aidons, que nous prenons les bonnes décisions et les chefs d'État de grandes dispositions, alors pour notre mère la Terre, nous aurons gagné notre révolution. Et le deuxième poème, c'est un petit clin d'œil aux communautés. Il a été écrit par Léopold Senghor, président du Sénégal pendant 20 ans, francophile et premier africain à rentrer à l'Académie française. Et il est mort près de chez moi en Normandie. Il a vécu sa fin de vie en France. Et il était toujours interpellé par ce qu'on disait l'homme de couleur. Alors il a écrit un poème qui s'appelle L'homme de couleur. Imaginez que je suis noire et un homme. Et il dit, cher frère blanc, quand je suis né, j'étais noir. Quand j'ai grandi, j'étais noir. Quand je suis au soleil, je suis noir. Quand je suis malade, je suis noir. Quand je mourrai, je serai noir. Tandis que toi, homme blanc, quand tu es né, tu étais rose. Quand tu as grandi, tu étais blanc. Quand tu vas au soleil, tu es tout rouge. Quand tu as froid, tu es bleu. Quand tu as peur, tu es vert. Quand tu es malade, tu es jaune. Et quand tu mourras, tu seras gris. Alors, de nous deux, qui est l'homme de couleur ? Est-ce qu'on devrait répondre à cette question?
Merci, Yva, merci. Up next, we're going to open the mic to a very special lady. We've been talking for a few months and we never had the opportunity to hear on the mic. So we're going to change, should I say, language this evening. We're going to speak a little Dutch. Don't ask me to say anything in Dutch. I hope we'll have some sort of translation afterwards. Smyrna, come and bless us with your wonderful poetry.
Good evening, my name is Smyrna, and I'm from Curacao. And the poem I'm going to recite this evening is a poem about the love everybody should experience daily. It's in Dutch. Omarm rijkelijk de dag. Knuffel met een truffel de dag. Titel zonder titel de dag. Streel met fluweel de dag. Dans, chans, vrijelijk met de dag. Voel je elke morgen geborgen in de tedere, ruige schoot van de dag. Laat tranen van verdriet en geluk de vrije loop in de compassieve, gespierde armen van de dag. Inhaleer de levenselixier elke seconde van de dag. Maak van elke dag een wauwdag. Pluk met een glinsterende glimlach van geluk jouw dag. Het mag. Thank you.
I guess you're gonna tell us a bit about, just briefly, what the poem.
It's about the love everybody should experience every day. So play with your day. Yeah. So embrace your day and kiss your day. It's about that. Kiss your day because it's your day. So okay. Maybe sometime we'll translate it into English. I don't know. Somebody can help me to do it. One of them.
Thank you, Smyrna. Love, love, love. Well understood. Up next, we have Monsieur Franz Germs. Tonight is Franz Germs, and we will respect it as the poet. Applause.
It is a fact that usually when looked at, I'm referred to as either the principal or the president or the deputy of something of the sort. And tonight, none of those personages is in front of you, so I'm going to leave. You know, this is the person that writes. Have been writing sometimes some things. And this piece that I have has been written a very long time ago. I was still living in Guadeloupe and working in Guadeloupe when I wrote this, when Jocelyne also was going to school in Guadeloupe. I have it in front of me. It's written in French, and we're going to try this. Mon petit monde est malade. Vérité aujourd'hui dissible, vérité longtemps prévisible, des bas des terres basses jusqu'en haut du paradis, mon petit monde est malade. Excès de matérialisme, bien trop de politisme, excès de démagogie, bien trop d'hypocrisie, mon petit monde est malade. Autant d'immoralité et de manque de charité, irresponsabilité et autant d'iniquité. Mon petit monde est malade. C'est ma faute, oui, c'est ma faute. École aussi, c'est ta faute. Et toi, papa, c'est ta faute. Télévision, c'est ta faute. Mon petit monde est malade. Facebook, TikTok, c'est ta faute. Instagram et X aussi. Smartphone de jour et de nuit. Nouveauté, nouveau danger. Mon petit monde est malade. Pasteur aussi, c'est ta faute. Penseur aussi, c'est ta faute. Président, c'est ta grande faute. République, c'est ta grande faute. Mon petit monde est malade. Et nous voilà, bateau ivre, en direction de nulle part. SOS à homme ou Dieu. Oui, nous serons entendus. Car mon petit monde espère. Toi et moi, et lui et nous, prions, pensons, agissons. Créer l'espoir et construire. Donner la main. Donner un regard pour mon petit monde malade qui attend et qui espère pour ne plus être malade.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Frank Holmes, the poet, the writer. Up next, we have Miss Yellow Guavaberry, aka Alexandra Vioti. We call her Yellow. If I lay round of applause, please.
Good night, everyone. How are you guys? Good. I'm good too, and I'm happy to be with you tonight.
I'm happy to be with you tonight.
Oh, thank you. So, I have 2 poems for you tonight. One in French, one in English. Starting to know the drill, right? Okay. So, what are we starting with? French? Okay. So the French one is according to the theme, which is empowerment, right? And for me, empowerment starts with freedom. And the first freedom that we have is in our minds, right? So I invite you to use your imagination every day without any limits and to protect it from anybody who tries to give you boundaries where there is none, actually. So you are the captain of your soul, as Nelson Mandela says. And as Bob Marley says, free yourself from mental slavery. All right. Donc ce poème en français s'appelle L'illusionniste. L'illusionniste se donne beaucoup de mal. Au fond, il sait que ce n'est pas normal. Toute cette énergie à maintenir son image et de s'accrocher ainsi à une fausse image. L'obsession de l'argent, c'est une vraie maladie. Recherche d'identité en colonisant autrui. Quête de reconnaissance, ménage en plein déni, un besoin d'exister si profondément enfoui. Derrière l'illusion, un terrible mal-être que l'illusionniste ne saurait reconnaître. Il y a le besoin de Dieu, mais ne veut pas l'admettre.